Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and this is the Coffee Table. And we've got a wonderful show lined up for you today. And I know that I always say this, you know it's always true, but whenever I'm researching for a show and I end up learning a whole bunch of things that I never knew about before, I always know that I'm going to have a really good time on the show. And therefore, so will you. We're going to be talking about water scarcity and agriculture/food systems today on the Coffee Table. And it's really fascinating to see the connections between water scarcity, peace, and agriculture, and the consumption of water, and how water consumption is not the same as water usage, and all sorts of fascinating things we're going to be unpacking on the show today. And it's quite a special one because I have a guest with me on the set, and you know how rare that is these days. So we are delighted to be welcoming Dr. Mohsin Hafiz, who is the country representative for the International Water Management Institute, which is a research for development organization with offices in 13 countries around the world and a global network of scientists in over 30 countries around the world. Exciting. We love science on this show. And joining us across the internet is Hammad Naqi, who has been the Director General of WWF Pakistan since 2014. In the 17 years he's been with the WWF, Mr. Khan has, as Director of Programs, managed the freshwater, sustainable agriculture, environmental assessment, and climate change programs at the WWF. He has also been a core member of WWF International's Global Freshwater and Toxics teams. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Is it lovely? So, Dr. Mohsin, I want to sort of begin, Dr. Hafiz, I beg your pardon. I would sort of like to begin at the beginning. And when we talk about water scarcity, or we have conversations about a water secure future, what does that mean?
First of all, thanks, Mina, for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and just talk about the water scarcity, and then I think we need to look around that one. The water scarcity is linking with that. It could be for anyone, because water is for life. And when we are talking about for water life, what we need to see where we are using the water in our day-to-day life. Water is used for growing agriculture crop, water is used for drinking, water is used for industry, water is used for many sectors there. So water is very essential, and then the water scarcity comes there when we are looking around that the per capita water availability is less. There are certain thresholds. Now in Pakistan, we have our water scarcity less than 1,000 liter per day, and that's
per person?
Per person.
So it's less than 1,000 liters a day. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Yep. Yes, water scarcity less. Yep. And less than 1,000. Yep. Per day, per person, and that's where it matters a lot. So water scarcity is a part of parcel of that one, the food system. And then when we are talking about the water scarcity linking with all the growing population, all the other problem there, then that becomes quite huge. And Pakistan is considering water scarcity is one of the major risks for Pakistan, for sustainable development of Pakistan.
You know, I always get really serious when I think about these things, because water is a finite resource. And I think that a lot of us tend to think of, you know, when in school we learn about the water cycle and we're like, well, you know, precipitation happens and then the water, you know, rain or snow, and then it gets absorbed into the earth, and then you have groundwater. So there's a sort of false sense of security around that, well, you know, it's a cycle that just keeps on renewing itself. But that is clearly not the case anymore, at least.
Yeah, that's true, because water, we need to think about there are water sources of water. Typically that the water, it comes from the rain, this glacier melting, the snow and all that one. Then that travels from that, typically we are looking around the climatic condition. Then in Pakistan, in northern area, there is plenty of rain, and that's the start of the origination of rivers. And then the water comes and then it's stored into the dams. And typically we think that when the dam is used for that, for the power generation, but that's not a true fact. The dams are used typically for water storage, because typically when we are looking in the Indus Basin in the part of Pakistan, we have around 80% of water coming in the monsoon season, which is 2 to 3 months. And the remaining months we have only less than 20% of water is coming. And if we will store that water, which is coming around the monsoon season, we will have enough storage to deal with the climate shocks, which is flood or drought. But unfortunately, we have only 30 days of storage for the whole year.
Only 30 days?
30 days of storage. So that's brings that the problem in Pakistan is that the water is either it's going downstream to the environment, it's changing a lot during the monsoon season. There is a flood damage and everything, and plenty of water is going below the Kotri, to the delta. But the remaining 9 months, we don't have enough water. And that's what we are facing a lot of problem there. So it's really the water scarcity and linking with the, basically that the storage is critical for the reliability of water supply throughout the whole year.
Yeah, because we need it makes complete sense that if it has to be a consistent supply of water. Like you can't have a glut in 1 month and then the rest of the. But that's exactly what's happening. Wow, I'm also sort of now considering this myself. Hi, Hammad, can you hear me? I'd like to draw you into our conversation as well.
Thank
welcome.
you. Yeah, I can hear.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when we're talking about water and the water that we use for consumption, in the sense that the water that we drink and the water that we use for agriculture and the water that comes into our taps, all of that is fresh water. Is it? Is all of that fresh?
Yeah. I mean, whatever water we can consume or what is required is fresh water.
Right, and then it's fresh water, the water that we get from rain and basically precipitation and glaciers melting. That's all. Those are sources of fresh water for us particularly.
Okay, first a clarification, and then I'll come back to this point.
Yeah.
So, as a country, we are experiencing an exponential shift in our water profile.
Right.
Dr. Mohsin talked about, the water availability. The clarification is, we are a water scarce country because at the moment, the water availability, like per capita, is 1,000 cubic meter per person on a yearly basis, right? But if you look at the present situation and if you look at the demand profile, we are heading towards a stage where there will be physical water scarcity, which means that people will be looking for water. So in our case, along with the precipitation and snow and glacier melt, I think the reservoirs, the groundwater in most places, I mean, there are places where the groundwater is brackish, but it's also is a source of these lakes, these wetlands, precipitation, snow and glacier melt. Like in our case, half of the water in our water bodies comes from the snow and glacier melt. Like it's almost 60%. Yeah. And it's the monsoon. We are children of monsoon. Both, it's not just Pakistan, also India, like this region.
Yes.
So children of monsoon, I think our survival greatly. If we have good monsoons, we have good crops. We have, even it affects our GDP.
Quite
now,
right.
The problem. I think the problem is that globally, 70% of the available water, the fresh water, is used for agriculture.
Yes.
In our case, it's more than 90%. So let's keep that in mind. We have an agro-based economy, and even if you look at the manufacturing industry, that's also closely tied to the agriculture sector. Now. Yes. And obviously, the rest is used primarily, like I think hardly 4% is used by the industry, and the remaining 6% by the domestic sector.
Yep.
Now, environment. Let's also keep that in mind. Environment is not recognized as a water user. So, environment, the delta, the wetlands, the habitats. Maybe we do not consider that they also need water because. We normally do not allocate water for environment.
Yeah, because that just happens by itself.
Yes.
And then you also can't control it, I imagine. You can't, can you? So I don't think that you can control the consumption of water by the environment. I love it as a concept. It makes complete sense, but it's also sort of imaginatively nice to think about it. The delta is just like glug, glug.
To control something, if you have a lot of water, But if you're already struggling to meet the requirement of your main sectors, which is agriculture, people, people and food, obviously. Now, I was coming to these challenges because the thing is, our population is increasing. I mean, and increasing at a rate which is not at all acceptable and sustainable. Then there is a rapid urbanization. Look at the population of our mega cities is increasing. And obviously in urban areas, the per capita water available, the consumption also increases. Same is the case with, industry. So there will be more competition within these water users. It's not all right. We have abundance of water and agriculture sector is free. And that was the reason that a lot of our agronomic practices, I mean, we can discuss that in detail later, the way we produce food, the way we allocate, water for food is not at all sustainable. It's not efficient. We're not managing our water resources properly.
Absolutely. And because the conversation is around climate change has been so persistent and perpetually being refined also. But it is it's a reality that we have to deal with as a global crisis situation as well, that climate change will affect developing countries more adversely than developed countries. And then that's a sort of catch-22 also, where developing countries don't have the resources or don't have the technology or don't have the incentives to be able to put into place measures that will help protect them from these effects. And water is one of those things. So like you said, for example, like our reservoirs are the only things, are the only sort of, is the only system we have right now to store water. But are there other things that we can be doing? For example, are there other ways that we can be kind of conserving our monsoon fresh water, for example?
Thanks, Mina. Yes, I mean, first let's look around where Pakistan is standing in terms of the global climate vulnerability. Pakistan is fifth topmost at the global climate vulnerable country. And when we are looking around that one, so definitely the climate is one of the known fact, and to overcome of that one, we need to think about what are the other resilient solutions available which we can develop it. One is the dams. The dams definitely need to be, there are need of the more dam building, but unfortunately, we are not looking around the other soft side of the solution. And soft side of the solution is whenever the dam, I mean, during the monsoon season, we could store plenty of water through the localized solution, through the nature-based solution, nature-positive solution. What that means that the water could be recharged into the lakes. Water could be in the parks. There is a small filtration. There is a small pond which could be storing the water, and also injecting the water into the groundwater. So that replenish the groundwater, and then that's we call it managed aquifer recharge. You replenish the water when you have plenty of water available to the aquifer, and then you pump the water back whenever you need water. And then you need to, I mean, there are a lot of climate resilience. Just to give you the example that in Balochistan, there is around 11 million acre foot water is coming through the rains. I'm talking about the non-part of the Indus Basin. Out of that one, 1 million acre foot we are harvesting.
Is that a lot of water? Because it sounds like a lot of water.
Lot of water, But then in the context of Balochistan water scarcity and everything. But then the out of 11 million acre foot, 10 million acre foot is going out wastage into the system.
What? And only keeping 1 million.
But what we can do is small localized system, and where we could think about that the storing the water in the aquifer. Through that, in our old system, we had the village ponds and those sort of things are there. We could also, I mean, those are the natural buffers, those are the things, but obviously we need to look around that one wherever we could do it, and there are many ways where we could look around the nature-positive solution, nature-based solution, and that to harmonize the water and then to have more water available. If we compare with any of the developed countries, I had the opportunity to work in 14 countries in the USA, in Australia, and in UK, in the developed countries, and then the developing countries. Compare with India, India has plenty of the dams, which is not a 30-day storage, but more than a year storage there. Australia also has more than 2 years of enough storage to provide the water. USA and the other countries same. But in addition, they are also going for the other other options there.
Yes.
Many aquifer recharge is one of that one. The rainwater harvesting is one of the classical example.
I really want to ask you more about rainwater harvesting, because I always think about rainwater harvesting, and whenever it rains, I'm like, I wish I had a big drum or something, and all this rainwater should go in here. But we're going to take a very quick break before we go more into rainwater harvesting. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table, and a fascinating conversation we're having about water scarcity and water conservation. And I have many questions that I'm very excited to be able to ask today from Mr. Mohsin Hafiz, who is the country rep for the International Water Management Institute, and Hammad Naqi, who is the Director General of WWF Pakistan. Many questions. And sort of many hopeful and many sensible and practical solutions also. Like we were talking before the break about aquifers, for example. What is an aquifer?
Aquifer is the hydrological layer which is under the groundwater, which is basically a storage which is natural, in the hydrological layer, which is storing the water into the system, in the ground.
So when we sort of do a bore and we install a water pump, then that is what we are tapping into.
Yeah, and the aquifer is typically, I will not go into the technical definition, but the one is that the confined, which is that the water which goes in, that stays in there.
Right.
Other is the unconfined, which is just kind of the water goes in, but water seeps into the further downstream and all sort of things. So it's a kind of, there are two kind of, and typically when we are promoting that the water storage, we go for the confined aquifer, which is where we store the water, and we know the water is available within that the hydrogeological layer within that the system, and we could pump it water back.
So this is like a natural underground tank.
Underground tanks, yeah.
So how do you get water into it? How can you inject water into it?
I think that typically the way we you could naturally, when the water is standing, water is going seepage into that into the aquifer. But if you have there are you could also, the natural wells, also typical storage of the water will seep in. And as well as basically that the lakes are natural ability, that they have the storage. It depends on the salt types and everything, but there are there are the scientific ways where you could inject the water into that in the confined aquifer, where you know that how much water you have injected, and then you know how much water you could pump it back. So in that way, you will be sustainably able to manage that water there.
So historically, if we were talking about the pond in the village, for example, then that was a kind of natural way to get money to get water into your aquifer. But how do you know where the water is?
Well, the thing is, again, we need to think about historically that the pond was used as a water for drinking and for many other purposes. But now the ponds are also contaminated with the sewage and all sort of things like that. That's also the problem is there. So the pond is, let's say if there is a pond, a small, that in a park, a small pond, which you inject the water, and the water will seepage it into the ground. You could also basically, drill a hole or kind of the well, which is just recharging the water, plenty of recharging the water, and you know how much water you have injected into the system. But knowing that how much water is the consumption, how much the water you have totally you will be extracting over the year, that will give you the idea how much water. The other question you have asked, that how we will know that where is the water standing. There are many scientific techniques, electrical resistivity, georesistivity, and then that's where that will tell you what exactly the thing is there. But that's for the unknown system. But for Pakistan, we have excellent information about the groundwater system, at least where are the confined layers, where are the unconfined layers, and how these layers are connected and how the groundwater moves. And there are the data loggers, the scientific tools, the method where we could monitor that one, the groundwater level, as well as the groundwater quality and how the groundwater moves.
So we have all of this information, and we have
patchy. In a patchy way.
In a patchy way, but we still have there's some place to make a start from.
Yeah, sure.
That's important. Yes, Hammad.
Okay, so when we were discussing about these wells, I think WWF has installed a few of them.
Yes.
Because we want to promote this thing. And I think this is important because we are concretizing our cities. We are removing the green belts and a lot of other space which used to actually recharge, the aquifers. And the result
because it was
is that
exposed soil. It was exposed earth that could absorb, literally it was there as a sponge absorbing all that extra water, all the runoff.
It's like a sponge, the water seeps through and percolates and, recharges the groundwater.
Yeah.
But when you put like concrete everywhere, you literally get rid of the vegetation, you get rid of parks, you get rid of open space. Then the result is what we are witnessing in Lahore, in Karachi, that during the monsoon, during the rains, you have these flash floods.
Yes.
It's like and then obviously it also damages the property, it damages infrastructure. So that's, I think, the recharge well, if you can link that to if you have good roofs and good space where you also harvest the rainwater and it recharges the groundwater. So we need such solutions. And the water challenge is such a big challenge for the country that we need to look into this challenge in a very holistic manner. It's not one size fits all.
No, it really isn't.
You were talking about dams. Yes, unfortunately, it's just like for all the environmental problem, our policy and decision makers, they always say plant trees. I mean, we need plantation, we need trees, but planting trees is not the solution.
Yes.
Similarly, building dam is not the solution to address and manage all your water problems. You talk about, Dr. Mohsin talked about, having a 30-day storage and compared to a lot of other countries which have more days of storage, which is maybe required. So I'm not saying, I'm not against the dam, but let's not portray dams as the solution. It's a huge infrastructure, requires a lot of money. People can see, people can talk about that. That's understood. But as I said, there are many other things which are maybe not the typical hard engineering solutions, but maybe soft solutions.
Yes.
It's also a governance issue. We can save water by managing it, in our agriculture sector. There are practices, there are agronomic practices, there's a lot of conveyance laws, there's, the kind of crops that we are growing. Do we need that crop? Do we need that much area under a high delta sugarcane crop? Do we need 80 plus sugar mills? Look at what's happening in this sector. We're trying to import sugar, and then the installed capacity is way beyond the requirement of this country. How much area should be under rice?
Yes.
What are the alternatives? We need to take some tough decisions. It's not that, we've been doing this. My grandfather used to do it like this. We will continue to do it.
No.
The things have, a lot of water has passed, through the bridge.
Yes, that's a lot of water under the bridge since then. I love a good pun. But let's do this. Let's talk about food systems. And again, now food systems is a subject that the whole world has been talking about. And I know that last year there was a summit in Italy and the UN is on it, and a lot of countries are talking about food systems and its connection with water, because you can't have agriculture without water. And like Hammad has also told us that sort of 70 to 90% of the world's water, fresh water, is used for agriculture and also for energy production. Apparently those are like the big two. So when we talk about food systems, Dr. Hafiz, what are we talking about? Like, what's a food system?
I think typically when we talk about the food system, it's from the supply, from the initial production, from that until supply and then the consumption.
Yes.
And when we are talking about the water system and its linkage with the food system, typically we think only, okay, water system and food system, okay, we are only about the agriculture, which Hammad was mentioning, 70% or 90% using it. But at IWMI, we think the other way around. We think that when the water system and food system are complementary, and then if we need to transform the transformation of the food system, we need to think about what are the critical factors which will be affecting. So let's look around at the water system. And the water system, we could say that one rightly that it could be on 4 other critical things which we can do it. First is water supply for the food system.
Right.
Okay, that brings all that the water which we are talking about, the water storage in the dam, the lakes and everything, which is about the biodiversity and everything, which is providing that the enough water for the system there.
Yeah.
And then we coming about that one, the water used for the food production. And then that's where the 90% of the water in Pakistan is using for the food production.
Which means that we're using water, as a layperson, we're using water to water the fields and irrigation to grow that crop. And then we're using more water to process that crop so that we can eat it.
Yeah, so it's a whole supply chain system. But then the problem comes there that if you're looking around in the Pakistan in the context into the water system, 90% water is used for growing agriculture crops. And out of the 90%, the 4 crops, rice, wheat, sugarcane, and rice, wheat, sugarcane, and cotton.
Yes.
Those are the around 90, they are using around 80% of water out of that one. But in terms of looking around the GDP, there's only 5% contribution is there from that one. So we are using a lot of wastage of water, which could be stored, and then water could be used for improving for the economy and other sort of thing, because Pakistan economy is based on the water. Okay.
So we're using 90% of the water in Pakistan to grow crops, which are only contributing 5% of our GDP.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, I think that at this point we're going to take a very quick break while I process this information, and we will be back in a jiffy. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table. We're in conversation with Dr. Mohsin Hafiz and Hammad Naqi Khan about water scarcity and agricultural usages as well. And before the break, Dr. Hafiz gave us like this mind-blowing nugget of information that 90% of our water is being used for crop growing that doesn't contribute a commensurate amount to our GDP. So clearly we have a lot of farming practices that need to be fixed. And Hammad, you will tell me more about this in just a minute. But Dr. Hafiz, you were also wanting to complete your thought about the crops and things.
Yeah, sure. And then in addition, we have more than 1.5 million tube wells, which are pumping water. So that's also adding the 60% of the groundwater contribution. For crop water requirement meeting. But then we need to also look around the water in that the food consumption, how much water is used in the food consumption, and then whether we are talking about the safe water access to the people and all sort of thing, the healthy water. And then there is a lot of improvement need to be done on agriculture practices at the farm scale level, which need to do it. A lot of innovation. The last thing comes about the water risk in the food system, because we are the 5th most climate vulnerable country. We are facing often the floods and drought. How we develop and water system, if that could, the risk could break the food system. So we need to really think about the integrated way. And just last month, IWMI, in partnership with many other international, we organized at the UNFSS, the Food System Independent Dialogue. And it was about the role of water, energy, food nexus in a changing climate for Indus Basin.
Water, energy, and food.
Nexus for in a changing climate.
Yes.
Where we looked around that one, we invited more than 100 participants there, internationally and nationally, and we had a really debate about that one. At the moment, we are working in a silo approach, but how we could think about systematic approach, where we're thinking how the water system is linking with the food system and then the energy system, because those are part and parcel are there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is that it's all connected, and we've been talking about this in the breaks also, about how upstream decisions will affect downstream lives as well. And the whole water system is all interconnected, and we can't just look at one aspect of it without considering all the others, because, you know, water moves. So, Hammad, tell me more about our agricultural processes. And, you know, we were talking about how a lot of them are very outdated, and a lot of our irrigation systems use too much water. And I'm sure that there's a lot of water that's being wasted in a lot of practices that are just outmoded. And I'm also now thinking about all the genetically modified seeds that are being used. Do you think that they even require that much water to be cultivated as well? So there's lots of things kind of going on here.
Okay, I mean, these are the issues which, you know, have been debated for ages, and unfortunately looks that as if, I mean, this is kind of a never-ending debate because we don't see concrete decisions. Everybody says we are a agro-based economy,
Yes.
but look at the priority which we give to this sector. Look at the money which is allocated, to improve the research, in this sector. A lot of these practices, I mean, look at our yield. We talk about we need to improve the efficiency. We don't need to, obviously we need to improve the efficiency. But we need to improve, we need to improve the water productivity. How much water is being used to produce 1 unit of, suppose, rice, 1 unit of wheat, and 1 unit of cotton or sugarcane.
Yeah.
And just compare that with, with other countries.
Right.
Yes. If you look at our yields and compare it
Crop
within the
per
region,
drop.
like India. Yeah, but exactly, that's more important, the water productivity. The second is, as I said, we need to literally, the Prime Minister recently announced a committee to improve, this agriculture sector.
Yes.
I don't want to go and tell the names.
No, let's not.
You don't see a single farmer in that committee. These bureaucrats and couple of politicians, they are good. They know, they
mean
know
well.
everything.
They mean well, but they're not sort of people on the ground.
Exactly. But these are, the thing is, until and unless it's like literally a participatory and kind of a inclusive group.
Quite right. Because without inclusivity, we can't have sustainability without inclusivity. And I spoke to several agriculturalists who are sadly not able to come and join this conversation. And they're also talking about how they have tried to, for example, introduce a sprinkler system for irrigation as opposed to just flooding fields. But there is a great deal of resistance from the farmers who work the land because they think that this is silly and that they don't think it's going to work. So those are also conversations that need to be happening.
Again, some of the solutions which are being proposed or which are being practiced in developed world, where they have a lot of energy. Drip or sprinkler irrigation, maybe they work very good in those geographies. But in our context, maybe they are good for orchards and for maybe few crops. But we cannot promote that solution across the board. Our current practices where, take the example of any crop, sugarcane, you go for trench plantation, you save 30% of water. For cotton, you go for alternate furrow, you go for bed and furrow, you save 40% of the water.
That's great.
You level your land, you save 30% of the water. I'm not saying that these are novel, innovative ideas. And a lot of them, they're already being practiced by the farmers and being promoted by the Agriculture Extension Department. The problem is not at the scale which is required to really address this challenge. That's the problem. Bits and pieces, WWF has done this, IWMI has done this, Agriculture Department, XYZ organization. But we are talking about these millions of farmers. Most of these farmers, they have small land holding. They have limited access to resources, to technology, to information. And that's where there's a huge gap. Most of them, they do subsistence farming. If there is a good seed available, they can't afford that. If there are good practices, the better management practices, which needs to be implemented, they lack resources to do that.
So even if they knew about it, they don't have access to those resources. And I think that, Dr. Hafiz, that's where
the role of government.
Right. And that's where we're sort of coming back to talking about an integrated system where there needs to be the government, there needs to be, the farmers, there needs to be, civil society also in some ways. So an integrated approach to this. So there's so many stakeholders in the water conversation. So what are some ways forward for us?
I think I will just go back to that, the UNFSS independent dialogue, which we picked up, and then there was a good representation from civil society, from the government, from the donor, from the academia. And there was 3 key recommendations from that, the dialogue finding. One was about the we need to look around holistic system way, and we need to have the data from a system approach. Second thing is we need to have the R&D, research and development funds need to be invested more, which Hammad has mentioned a minute ago. And third important thing is we need to have a policy coherence. Instead of intersectoral competition, how we could harmonize that one. And that will be only based when we are looking around the integrated system. Typically in Pakistan, that we are just making a decision that the silo approach. Each ministry is the ministry of, we have 4 policies. Ministry of Climate Change have their own policy. Ministry of Water Sources have national water policy. Food security and energy policy. And those policies, I mean, they are not well integrated with each other. And that's one of the fundamental drawbacks. Even if you take the climate change policy, that emphasizes a lot about the water.
Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, even at the very basic level of it, when there is water scarcity, then that is going to lead to conflict. And like Hammad said, if there's physically no water, then you are basically setting up competition for water, which will affect our peace, even globally. And water scarcity means food scarcity. And I was looking at, and I wrote it down as well, the UN World Food Program's got a hunger map, and 957 million people across 93 countries don't have enough to eat right now. In a world where water scarcity is still maybe not at an emergency level, but clearly there's something very wrong with the way that we're managing our water and our food systems if millions of people are starving around the world.
I fully agree. In me, I mean, the vision is a water secure world. As a part of, typically, when people are talking about the food system, they often ignore about the water system, because water system and food system are part and parcel. Under that, the dialogue series for the UNFSS, we organize the 4 dialogues, and one is Pakistan, other is in MENA region in Cairo, third is in Central Asia, and then 4th is in South Africa. And then took that finding towards the global dialogue, which was organized in New York, and where the important thing was there, how the water system could play an important role for food system. Instead of looking around in the food system, where we emphasize a lot about pesticide, about the seeds and everything, but water is life. Without water, you can't do that one. And if we try to think on a holistic system, then we will be able to overcome the issue of malnutrition, overcome the issue of food insecurity, and everything is there. Even in Pakistan, there is, 900 people, a million people around the globe, but in Pakistan, the statistics are telling that around 18% people are also having the food hunger, and then all sort of thing, and then there is a stunted growth, malnutrition, and everything in children and women, and all that's a part of we need to think together, and we need to think about water system and how that could be played with the food system, and how we could improve the food security.
So, Hammad, as a sort of parting remark, WWF works a lot with civil society as well, and with the government. So are there sort of things that we can do as lay people to help conserve water? Because I feel like there also one aspect of this is an awareness that water is a finite resource. And just because it comes out of the tap when you turn it on doesn't mean that that's going to happen forever.
Well, Mina, a lot needs to be done. I think it's very clear to us that water is the biggest environmental challenge being faced in this country. And we need to understand that if we ignore one sector, we also, increase the burden of another sector. I'll just give you a small example. We are not protecting our water bodies, the sources of water. The result is...
What does that mean? What does it mean to not protect our water bodies?
Okay, these are, whether the misuse or if you look at the quality of water. So all kinds of untreated effluents, ends up in our water bodies, whether it's the municipal sewage or the industrial effluent. The result is that vast majority of population is exposed to poor quality of water, primarily for drinking purposes. The result is, and that's where we need to address the root causes. The result is that look at the rising cases of waterborne diseases. Look at the deaths, the mortality rate, and all kinds of stuff. Now, and look at the cost on the health bill. Look at the hospital admissions. So you ignore one sector, and you are increasing the burden of your health sector. So we need to keep that in mind. we were discussing if the aquifers gets contaminated, why Lahore, the Vasa is pumping water from 800 feet because the shallow groundwater is totally contaminated. So media, civil society, we need to understand, as I said, this is the biggest environmental challenge. Every individual, every institute has to take this in a very serious. The good thing is there are solutions available. There are solutions which are simple, which are cost effective, both for food production, both for daily use.
Tell me some of them. I want to know some of them. Tell me some of the daily use ones, for example. How can we conserve water on a daily basis?
The daily basis is the water conservation.
Right.
Water, we need to treat water as a commodity. Even if I'm a poor people, I have a basic human right. The Constitution gives me this right to have access to potable water, period. And the government, the state should be responsible for that. But going beyond that, if I have access to water, and if my tap is leaking, which costs me 25 rupees, and I'm not replacing that tap because water is free. That the drinking water to the communities should be free, but not water. And it's a sensitive issue, pricing of water. We need to, that's one thing.
Yeah.
The second, and then as an individual, how to conserve water. There are so many examples. Every now kid is aware of that. And then in your sectors, we work with industry, we work with hundreds and thousands of farmers.
Yes.
Still, that urge, to promote these practices of water conservation, to have, seeds or crops which are more water efficient. I think that urge, we don't see that urge. The government, in some cases, in fact, many cases, have to provide subsidies so that the small farmers, which are in vast majority, follow, these practices, whether it's access to land leveling, whether it's, bread and furrow, the trench plantation, and then at the government level, tough decisions, cropping pattern, the water allocation, because it's also a very sensitive issue.
Quite right, it absolutely
lack of
is.
Trust.
No, clearly it's such a complex issue, but I feel like the hopeful thing is that there are solutions available and that there are avenues open to us, and there are lots of alternative avenues available to us to look at how we are consuming water, not just on an individual, but on an organizational level, at a state level. And these are the kind of conversations that if we keep having, then I'm hoping, and please forgive the pun, it's going to trickle down to everybody else. Thank you guys for watching this show. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.